Imagine standing at the center of ancient Rome, surrounded by thousands of people celebrating the beginning of your new life. Music fills the streets. Family members offer blessings. Guests raise cups of wine. Everyone tells you that this is a day of happiness. But behind the ceremony, behind the flowers, behind the promises of love, was a reality that many Roman women could not escape. A Roman bride was not simply getting married. She was leaving one household and entering another. Her father's authority could be replaced by her husband's. Her future could be decided by political alliances, family wealth, and social expectations. For many women, marriage was not a personal choice. It was a transaction between powerful families. And the wedding night itself carried a deeper meaning. It represented the moment when a woman's identity, legal position, and entire social world could change forever. Ancient writers described marriage ceremonies filled with symbolic acts, religious traditions, and customs designed to mark this dramatic transition. But were Roman brides truly terrified? Was there really a secret wedding night ritual hidden in history? Or has the story been distorted over centuries? The truth is far more complicated. And far more fascinating. But what really happened? To understand the fears surrounding Roman weddings, we first have to enter the world of ancient Rome. At its height, the Roman Empire controlled vast territories across Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. It was a civilization known for its armies, engineering, laws, and political achievements. But inside Roman homes, society followed strict rules. The family was the foundation of Roman life. The head of the household, known as the paterfamilias, held enormous authority. He controlled family property, finances, and major decisions. For women, marriage was one of the most important moments of their lives because it determined their place within this system. A Roman girl from an elite family could be married very young, sometimes in her early teens. This was not unusual in the ancient Mediterranean world. Marriage was often less about romance and more about social connections, inheritance, and political influence. A wealthy Roman family did not simply ask, "Does this person make my daughter happy?" They asked, "Will this marriage strengthen our family?" This created a world where marriage could unite powerful families, secure wealth, and even influence politics. One famous example was the marriage alliances of Roman leaders themselves. Political figures used marriages almost like diplomatic treaties. The personal feelings of the bride were often secondary. But Roman marriage was not always a cold arrangement. Some couples developed genuine affection, and ancient inscriptions reveal examples of husbands and wives mourning each other deeply after death. The reality was not simply love or cruelty. It was a society where personal emotions existed inside a strict system of power. And nowhere was that imbalance clearer than during the wedding ceremony itself. A Roman wedding was not a private celebration. It was a carefully planned public event filled with religious symbolism. The bride wore a special garment called a tunica recta, traditionally associated with purity and marriage. Her hair was arranged in an elaborate style using tools with religious meaning. A bright veil, known as the flammeum, covered her head. Ancient sources describe the bride being escorted from her father's home to her husband's house. This moment was one of the most symbolic parts of the entire ceremony. She was leaving one family and joining another. The procession through the streets was not just a celebration. It represented a transfer of authority. Some ancient writers compared this transition to a woman being removed from one household and placed into another. This symbolism may seem dramatic today, but in Roman society, family identity was everything. A woman's security depended heavily on her relationships with male relatives. Her father, husband, and sons often determined her social position. But the most misunderstood part of Roman weddings is what happened after the ceremony. Many modern stories describe a terrifying first-night ritual where Roman society supposedly claimed control over the bride. However, historians have found no reliable evidence for a universal Roman custom where another man had a legal or ceremonial right over a bride on her wedding night. This idea is often linked to myths about first-night rites, but those stories became more common in medieval and later writings rather than classical Roman evidence. The real fear came from something less dramatic but perhaps more powerful. A woman was entering a marriage where her independence could be extremely limited. The wedding night was not frightening because of one secret ritual. It was frightening because it marked a permanent change in her life. But that wasn't the whole story. History became darker when we look at the power imbalance between men and women in Roman society. Roman law gave men significant authority over family matters. Marriage could determine a woman's financial security, social status, and future. Some marriages were arranged when the bride was still very young. Imagine being raised in one household your entire life, only to suddenly be expected to adapt to another family, another home, and another set of expectations. This was the reality faced by many Roman women. Ancient literature gives us glimpses of these pressures. The Roman poet Ovid wrote about love and relationships, while historians such as Livy recorded stories of women whose lives were shaped by political and family decisions. One of the most famous examples is Lucretia. According to Roman tradition, Lucretia was a noblewoman whose story became a symbol of honor, power, and the consequences of male violence. The historical accuracy of the story is debated, but its cultural impact was enormous. Romans remembered her as an example of how private suffering could trigger public change. Her story supposedly contributed to the overthrow of the Roman monarchy and the creation of the Roman Republic. Whether every detail happened exactly as described is uncertain. But the fact that Romans preserved this story reveals something important. They understood that women's experiences inside marriage and family could have political consequences. Then something unexpected happened. As Rome expanded into an empire, marriage became even more connected to wealth and power. Elite women could sometimes gain influence through family connections. Some Roman women became wealthy property owners, managed businesses, and played important social roles. The picture was complicated. Roman women were not completely powerless. But they lived inside a system designed primarily around male authority. Behind every Roman wedding was a person whose voice is often missing from history. The bride herself. Ancient sources were usually written by men. They described ceremonies, laws, and family traditions. But the private emotions of ordinary Roman women are much harder to recover. Were all brides terrified? Probably not. Some may have looked forward to marriage, especially if it offered greater security or social opportunity. Others may have feared leaving their childhood home or entering a relationship they did not choose. The emotional reality depended on the individual woman, her family, her wealth, and her circumstances. A wealthy Roman woman might enter a powerful household with servants, property, and influence. A poorer woman might face a very different reality. This is one of history's greatest challenges. The past is not a single story. It is millions of different lives. And sometimes the most important historical discoveries come from ordinary objects. Archaeologists have found wedding-related artifacts, inscriptions, and household items that reveal how deeply marriage was connected to religion, family identity, and social expectations. A simple inscription remembering a wife who died young can reveal more about Roman emotions than a long political speech. Because behind the empire, behind the armies and emperors, were ordinary people trying to survive their own lives. So why does the idea of a terrifying Roman wedding night ritual continue today? Because history is often mixed with legend. Stories about powerful societies create fascination. The idea of a hidden Roman custom where brides were powerless fits a common image of ancient brutality. But historians must separate dramatic stories from evidence. The Romans certainly had harsh social structures. Women faced restrictions. Marriage was often controlled by families. Political marriages were common. And gender inequality was deeply embedded in Roman law and culture. But the specific idea of a universal wedding night ritual where brides were handed over to someone else is not supported by strong historical evidence. The real story is more complex. And perhaps more disturbing. Because the truth does not require a fictional ritual to reveal how unequal ancient society could be. A young woman could lose control over major parts of her life simply because she was born female in Roman society. That was the true power of tradition. The Roman wedding was a celebration of love, family, religion, and social connection. But it was also a moment of transformation. A moment when a woman crossed a line between two worlds. For some, it brought security and companionship. For others, it meant entering a life controlled by expectations they never created. The terrifying part was not a hidden ceremony performed in the darkness. The terrifying part was a society where personal choice often came second to family power. Today, Roman weddings are remembered through ancient texts, ruins, and artifacts. But behind those remains were real people with real fears, hopes, and dreams. So the question remains. Do you think ancient Roman women have been remembered fairly by history, or have their voices been lost forever? Because sometimes the darkest parts of history are not the stories we invented. They are the truths we almost forgot.